Hey guys, so Herald of Agony, it used to be a very strong, very meta, and people used to pick it for league start, and in general, it was good for new players because you could build just completely tanky. Juggernaut was the most popular option, I guess. Very tanky, and just let the Herald of Agony do the rest. And I never really liked that because the idea of going full tankiness and then letting your minion do all the work while you're just tanking it never really made sense to me, and I never liked that idea. However, since I am a bit desperate for builds and I was experimenting with other heralds, I may as well experiment with that since I never really played with the Herald of Agony. But I wanted to do something different, and I went with the Pathfinder. And I built it tanky in a different way, and this build I would definitely recommend. It's a bit difficult to set up, so maybe it's not very friendly for new players, but it's also pretty cheap. There are a lot of items that are, well, wouldn't say expensive, but require a bit of investment. For example, 5 flasks. You need 5 good flasks. Those alone can be a couple exalts maybe. But the build doesn't really have any super expensive item that you need. You can slowly build this up. And I went through a lot of iterations and changes until I found the right kind of setup for me. It may not be for you, but I like this setup for multiple reasons because I don't need to worry about flask at all. I don't need to worry about the healing. I either face tank or survive everything or just get one-shotted. And while it may seem pretty low on HP, it is actually surprisingly tanky. I was able to do Cirrus, even tank Cirrus, die beam. Essentially how this works is, if you don't know, the Pathfinder has recover 6% of your life when you use a utility flask, and you make your flask auto essentially. Once we get filled up, they get used, and then you gain charges when you get hit by an enemy. So then you just increase the amount of charges that you gain and reduce the charges that you use essentially to fully automate. And as you can see in the hideout, my flasks are fully automated. I'm not doing anything. They have permanent uptime. They do refresh themselves before they run out. And it takes a bit of setup to get to this point, but it works like wonders for map clear, and I love this playstyle. I wouldn't say I'm still the fan of Herald of Agony in general, but the damage is also great. I did not expect it to be that great because people were saying, oh, Herald of Agony, it got nerfed, now no one plays it. So I thought, I guess it's time for me to try it, because I always play things that get nerfed or before they get buffed. I was surprised it's actually doing a lot of damage. I got it to over almost to 6 million DPS depending on how many frenzy charges it has. And I went with like kind of lazy setup. You can definitely get more out of this. Like this fits me. I don't need to worry about my golems because I automated with the focus helmet. And the specters, I have 2 specters that are the same. One is the for frenzies and another one monkey is the spare monkey. If one monkey dies, I have another monkey. But both of them provide frenzy charges quicker, I guess. And minions do get a lot of damage from frenzy charges. I'm not entirely sure if I can guarantee that we always have, my Herald of Agony always has 3 frenzy charges, but I feel like 2 monkeys is enough. And specters unfortunately from time to time die. Like I said, I went through a lot of changes to find the right kind of setup for me. I needed basically feeding frenzy to provide a lot more, well, DPS for them, but I didn't want specters to have feeding frenzy because if they die then I got no other buffs. I lose the frenzy charges that specters provide, and I lose feeding frenzy. So I set up golems. Golems also provide me some tankiness. The Chaos Golem gives me physical mitigation, and Stone Golems give me regen, which I don't really need, but sometimes degenning, if no one is hitting me, then I have a hard time surviving, because this build is very tanky if someone keeps hitting you fast with smaller hits. So if you don't know, for Herald of Agony, each time you apply a poison, you get 1 virulent stack, and each virulent stack ramp up Herald of Agony damage. It's an immortal minion, so you don't need to worry about it dying, but you do need to worry about keeping up the poison stacks and virulent stacks. They do decay very quickly the higher it goes. I am currently at 55 maximum virulent stacks. You can go to 60, but I don't know if it's very reliable. Against single target it may be a bit harder to keep 60 virulent stacks, but for that I am using level 1 blighting with level 1 chance to poison. The level 1 chance to poison is important, but I have a lot of things that are linked to life tap just so that I don't use mana. And it's like perfectly synchronized or perfectly balanced, because when I use the focus I run out of mana almost completely, so I need other things to be set up with the life tap. So it was lacking a few sockets for offerings. I don't really want to rely on offering. You could probably squeeze an offering by dropping something, but I decided I don't need to worry about it. I have enough damage. And this build wouldn't really be able to do Uber bosses, I think. I haven't tried, I don't really see much reason to try that. It's not really tank enough. I think Uber bosses just do so much damage, they would just one-shot you, even if you can have good sustain. I'm not even gonna attempt Uber bosses probably, but it did pretty much everything I wanted, and I was actually surprised that I was able to do that. I was able to farm just fine tier 16 maps. I actually haven't really died with this build very often. This character went through 3 different builds, so it died a couple more times before it became this build. Currently 26 deaths, and I'm getting close to level 93. I think I started this character when I had 16 deaths, so I didn't really die many times with this, which is very surprising. One thing you need to avoid, or try to avoid, is physical damage as extra elements. Those things can make enemies one-shot you, and you can't really tank if enemies hit too hard. You can do it, but it's better to not do it. The other mods are not bad. The reduced flash charges obviously is bad, but the rest is pretty okay. I made a video about specifically Herald of Agony tricks and how you can get more virulent stacks quicker, which is basically using golden rule to reflect poisons on you, but then you need to be unaffected by poison, not immune. But I dropped the idea of using unaffected by poison modifier on the helmet or boots or what should I say, and just using level 1 chance to poison. I still do a bit of hero's damage because I am using 2 Circle of Nostalgia rings for the Herald of Agony. It's actually fine. It doesn't matter because I have so much regen, so much life sustain that it doesn't really matter a bit of poison, because I do reflect some poisons on me. However, each poison on me also increases my hero's resistance, so each poison on me also does less damage. So once I get, like, you can only get up to 100 poison stacks on you. Once that happens, you basically have 75 hero's res, and the poisons don't really do anything to you. Now I am using Lone Messenger node, which prevents me from using any other auras. It does give Herald of Agony 100% more damage with hits and 50% more damage over time with Herald skills. I was also trying the poison version, I briefly talked that in the previous video, but I decided to just completely drop the poison idea and just go fully hit damage. And yeah, it feels just much better. The clear speed seemed pretty alright. The single target was pretty alright. You just need to be sure that you keep maintaining the poison stacks. You can do that in many different ways, and you can find your own kind of playstyle. I was trying gas and damage taken with additional spells like Firestorm to keep more poison stacks, but in the end I dropped that, just kept the focus helmet for the 2 golems. Now to talk about some key items and skills and links quickly. I'm using very cheap option 2 called Iron Point Daggers plus 3 to physical spell skill gems, but it disables, you basically deal no elemental damage, which is actually fine. You don't want to deal elemental damage in case there's reflect map. And you can actually do physical reflect map, elemental reflect map, but I mean, your other minions may die, so you still probably would want to avoid that. The Herald of Agony will not die because it's immortal, and you cannot use link skills to link with it. So very cheap weapons like 10-15 heals. Body armor, I was, like I said, initially doing the poison, but you don't need the poison shenanigans. You can get that by selling 60 breach rings. Random modifier, but all you need is life and spell suppression, I guess. I do have 100% spell suppression. I don't know why in PUB it doesn't show that I have 100% spell suppression. I do have 100% spell suppression. I'm not sure why it doesn't show that. I actually have over 100%. Well, I have like 93 without the flask. The helmet, you don't necessarily need the helmet enchantment, but it does help a bit for clear speed and the mortar when it shoots the mortar skill. But essentially I went with the focus helmet, just nothing special, just life resistances, and then get the focus modifier. It lasts for 4 seconds and then it has 8-second cooldown, so it has 12-second downtime. But I just put 2 golems inside it with the meat shield to make them tanker, and feeding frenzy is basically DPS increase. Another important thing is the belt. The belt can have a lot of flash shenanigans, so you do want implicit with the increased flash charges gained, and then you want a modifier to craft which is a prefix, which is a suffix. You want to essentially you want increased flash charges gained and reduced flash charges used, and you want that on the passive skill tree. And I even have 1 medium jewel, cluster jewel, and the belt, like I said, and the Pathfinder as well. So basically you have permanent flasks. And if you're dying, by the way, if you're playing this build and you're dying, make sure that you get more flash charges gained and reduce flash charges used. You can always get more damage later, as long as you're not dying, I guess. You just want to get spell suppression and enough attributes, whichever you need. You're gonna need quite a lot of dex on this. Sorry, not dex, intelligence. So you may want that, and just get spell suppression, life resistances. You do want chance to intimidate enemies on hit, which also works with the spells. So I just throw ball lightning, it hits with the unleash, it hits multiple times, like 5-6 times per second while it passes through the enemy, and I throw 4 of them with the unleash. So it just basically guarantees intimidate, which increases the damage enemies take by attacks. Now, the Wither inflicts expires slower, doesn't really matter, I think. I am using Wither Totem. By the way, Herald of Agony is linked to anomalous minion damage. It doesn't have to be anomalous minion damage because it doesn't care about life, it's immortal. Withering Touch, you definitely want Pierce for clear speed, and I just kept forgetting to swap Pierce into a stronger one. So I also have damage on full life because it never loses life, it's immortal. Predators because you want to be able to command it to who to focus, so you want Predator's Mark. This is by the way non-crit, but you can add like Brittle Ground Boots. Not sure if it's worth it, it's probably not really worth it, it just adds so little. Yeah, and I do swap Pierce into Awakened Vicious Projectiles. I was playing on a 5-link just fine, clearing red tier maps, but of course you want 6-link eventually. I also had to get Aspect of the Spider. I have it on Amulet, it's +1 to physical, it can be +1 physical or +1 heals. Herald of Agony scales so very well with the levels. So ideally you would want to reach, I believe, 31 level, but that would require Empower, and Empower isn't cheap and it may not even be the best option. The Eldritch Implices for the most part are just a bit of extra, like a cherry on the cake. You don't necessarily need it except for the gloves, the Intimidate on hit. Pretty much everything else is just an extra. The enemies you have hit recently have a reduced life regeneration rate is also extra. It's just very nice, the Maven healing the bosses and stuff like that. The Spectres, you want to make them as tanky as possible, so I went with Anomalous Spectres. It's also linked with Meat Shield and Elemental Army just to make it as tanky as possible. I also went with the Impossible Escape, which has the Minion Instability. You can allocate points around Minion Instability. You can either pick this or you can pick the Wicked Ward. Basically, I wanted to reach these nodes to make my minions a bit tankier, the Golems and the Spectres tankier. Because if Spectres die, I actually have to weapon swap, use the corpses, then find those. It's just so annoying, but you want, oh my god, Carnage Chieftain. I hate Spectres. I hate Spectres. So, and then weapon swap back. Basically, in the weapon swap, you want to have Desecrate and Flesh Offering. Well, actually, I never even use Flesh Offering, like I said. But it's just Desecrate. And you want, I guess, faster casting weapon. With the Impossible Escape, I was also able to reach Golem Commander, which allowed me to have an extra Golem. And I am using 2 large cluster jewels with 4 medium cluster jewels. For the small one is the Lone Messenger jewel, and then Enduring Composure, so you generate endurance charges when you get hit very quickly, makes you tankier, and also Surging Vitality 2 jewels to give you like passive regen every 4 seconds, which is also pretty useful. I did take 2 chance to poison nodes because I want, basically the higher your chance to poison is with ball lightning, the easier it's gonna be to maintain a high virulence stacks. And since I am using Golden Rule, it basically doubles the amount of virulence stacks that I get per hit, essentially. The Flasks, like I already mentioned, you want gain charges when an enemy hits you, and then all sorts of effects like increased armor, extra elemental resistances, very important because without the Flask I'm not even capped on resistances, and a reduced effect of course on you, and of course speed for the Quicksilver. So you as a Pathfinder, you as a Pathfinder, I call it Flaskfinder. You as a Pathfinder, basically remove elemental ailments when you use a Flask, and your Flasks are on auto, and when you get hit you rotate those Flasks even quicker. So this is the node that gives you healing, removes corrupting blood and normal bleeding. So it has a lot of cool things to this and it works so well. I would definitely recommend this build. So yeah, if you got any questions, leave them in the comments below. I also don't know what build to do next, so I'm still struggling. That's why I actually played this build for longer than I normally do. I usually play to like level 90, 91, but this is coming close to level 93. I'm still farming because I just don't know what build to do next. Also, if you got some ideas what build to do, I'm gonna leave a link to this Google Doc which has a list of the skills that I use, the builds that I played, and the build ideas. So maybe it's gonna inspire you to do some build if you're also struggling not knowing what build to do and you don't really necessarily want to play some meta build. Yeah, but it's gonna be rough next 2 months figuring out what builds to play. I'm already struggling this hard, I don't even know. So yeah, that's it for now. Thank you for watching and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.